This week, I felt kind of compelled to maybe dive in to what may feel like a dangerous topic. But sometimes I think we have to go there. I mean, we have to kind of face some of the things that are difficult in our world. So the topic for this devotional is rage. And you can call it fury, you can call it anger, you can call it wrath, you can call it whatever word seems to describe it. But from where I sit and from what I witness, I see a lot of rage. And back in the summer, in middle of summer, I read this devotional that was talking about sacred rage. And I thought it was really interesting. And I wanted to save this devotional to kind of read it again and see maybe if it might become a devotional that I would do with kind of my own thoughts mixed in. And, you know, yet again, this week, we saw several acts of rage where people, their short fuses just got so short that it just took a little spark and it set them off. I was just reading that the shooting that we saw happen this week in Michigan was incited by the shooter feeling this anger against the Mormon church. And so he decided that he was going to lash out. His rage was going to get the best of him. You know, as I read this devotional that talked about rage, again, it was done in a time where I didn't see it as immediate things going on as around us, although it is continuing to go on around us. But as I read it, it talked about how sacred rage comes to us when we witness injustice and we have this reaction to that injustice. The problem is what you see as unjust and what I see as unjust may not be the same thing. What enrages you may not be the same thing that enrages me, and vice versa. And I might add, you may not understand what does enrage me, and I may not understand what enrages you, and therefore we've got this huge problem. To call something sacred rage is like beauty, I guess. It's in the eye of the beholder. And I think that's where it really gets dangerous for us. And in the end, what ends up happening is I'm enraged, you're enraged, we may not be enraged about the same thing, and then we stop listening to one another, we stop trying to understand one another, we just want to lash out. And that's what we see happening over and over again. And it's sad because I think we're better people than that. I think we can do better than what we have, especially recently. So a couple weeks ago, right after yet another shooting, I mentioned this thing that I saw online, and it was a quote that said, "We need to stop looking to the left and to the right. We need to start looking up." And I mentioned at the time that I really think that that's good advice, and I really do believe that it's still true. When we begin to talk about what enrages us, we got to look at this thing and we've got to start being honest with ourselves and recognize that sometimes it is the left and or the right that is doing the enraging, and we've got a better source to begin to look at. And so as I was thinking about this, my thoughts moved to a passage in James. And, you know, to be honest with you, I probably have done a devotional on this before, but this is kind of how Scripture is sometimes. It becomes, it may be relevant the first time you read it, but then something else happens and its relevancy grows or changes. And so in the midst of this letter that we know of as James, it says this: "You must understand this, my beloved. Let everyone be quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to anger. For your anger doesn't produce God's righteousness." Yeah, I read that, and again, I agree with it. And there's a lot of things to be said about that. And basically, I think what it's talking about is this idea that our anger, when it becomes kind of a harsh anger or an anger that wants to harm another person, is where we get ourselves into trouble. So the author of this devotional I was reading was talking about sacred rage, as a way of kind of awakening you to things that are going on around us that we may be upset about. And yet, the author also gave a warning. And that warning was to really check the motives of what is enraging you. Because here's the thing, we all got to get enraged. And if there is such thing as a sacred rage or a harmful rage, it's sometimes hard for us to measure which one is which and what's going on. But the author said that any rage that is driven by the need for revenge or the need to get even, that is often a harmful rage, because what happens is you don't want to heal the situation. You want to cause harm. You want to hurt the other person. You want to make sure that your team wins. But more than that, you want to make sure the other team loses. You see, that's where we begin to get into the problem. Making sure that the other team loses, or making sure that the other person goes down, or making sure that the other thought dies, is where we get into trouble. Because sometimes that thought doesn't just remain a thought, it becomes a person. So as I was thinking about this, and I was thinking about what motivates us and what causes this anger to well up inside us, and is there a good sense of anger, I often think of the words of Jesus. Because here's the thing, I know Jesus got angry. One of the times when Jesus got angry was when he walked into the temple and he saw people abusing this house of worship. And so he flipped over the tables and he yelled, "My house should not be a place where thieves gather. This is a place of prayer," is essentially what Jesus was trying to say. But here's the thing, he didn't do that to cause harm. He wanted to raise attention because he didn't hate the people that were doing it. He wanted them to understand how much more God was calling them to. And so what it ends up for me is this. Does my sense of anger, do the things that really move me to a place of unease, is that motivated by what I read and hear in Scripture, and most specifically, perhaps, what I read and see Jesus doing in Scripture? Is it in any way matching what Jesus said is the most important thing that we are to do? And that is to love one another, love God, love one another as we love ourselves. This becomes really the measuring stick by which we need to look at all things. We have to be honest with ourselves. We have to examine what is enraging us right now, what is really bothering us, and ask ourselves honestly, why am I feeling the way I'm feeling it? What is causing this rage? Is it the right? Is it the left? Or is it because what I see going on in my world today simply is not matching what God desires for us? And if it is that last part, we need to say to ourselves, how does Jesus expect us to act in this situation? How can what we do express a love for God, a love for others, as we love ourselves?